Namaste and welcome to NMIMS Indore Podcast, a show that keeps you on. Today we have with us Mr. Anil Swarup. Mr. Anil Swarup sir is a retired IAS officer from the 1981 batch. He has held several key positions as School Secretary, Secretary of School Education and various different portfolios. It's truly an honor and a privilege for our campus NMIMS Indore to host him. Welcome sir. Welcome to NMIMS Indore.
Thank you very much.
Sir, so when I was going through and preparing for the podcast, you had such diverse portfolio ranging from coal to school education and then horticulture also. So, sir, it brings me back to a very simple question. When did all it started? When did you get inspiration to join the civil services?
My inspiration to join the civil service came from my father. When I was 11 years of age, I saw a piece of paper wherein actually he had chalked out what I would do to become an IAS officer. So he wanted me to become an IAS officer. Then at that point in time, I didn't understand what IAS was. But over a period of time, as I understood what IAS was, I also wanted to become an IAS officer. And that's where it all started.
So sir, can you please tell our students specifically, because this podcast is viewed by a lot of students who are preparing. So from where did your graduation, and while through your graduation, did you prepare then and then only?
I did my graduation from Allahabad University, which was known to produce civil servants. So after my schooling in Lucknow, I went to Allahabad to do my graduation and post-graduation. I was aware of one fact very clearly, which helped me, was that I was not merely preparing for the civil service, I was preparing to prepare for the civil service. I understood at that point in time that there are certain attributes that are required of me, which may not directly be relevant to an examination, but indirectly. For example, developing my communication skills. And I did that when I was doing my bachelor's. I worked very hard on improving my communication skills, both spoken and written, and that helped me a lot. So as I keep telling even the aspirants now, that there are three important attributes that are required apart from gaining knowledge, because everyone reads, but not many people focus on improving their comprehension, improving their analytical skills, and improving their communication skills. These three attributes are prerequisite for preparing for a civil service exam, and hence I call it preparation for preparation.
So sir, adding to what you had just said, how should one recognize that he's the right attributes and characteristics of joining into the services, and then he should prepare?
I don't think there are any fundamental attributes that he should pre-possess, because a child, when he's born, doesn't have those attributes at that point in time. He learns over a period of time. The sooner you realize that you want to appear in the civil service, the better it is. And then get moving with developing these such attributes. These attributes can be developed. I could barely speak or write 5 sentences in English or Hindi when I passed my class 12, and I developed them thereafter. So the earlier you realize this, the better it is, but it's eminently doable by anybody.
So sir, adding on to that, can you please tell us about your first posting, first experience?
My first posting as subdivision magistrate was in Hardoi. It was Hardoi in state of UP, and it was tough in the sense that those were not great times. I recall when Indira Gandhi was assassinated. What followed thereafter was pretty, there was a lot of crisis, and I was attempting to manage that crisis as a consequence of the action that I proposed against a very powerful MLA. I was transferred out. So it was, as they say, Sir Mandate Ode Pade, it was baptized by fire.
So as a person, how was it? Because you have joined just the services, first posting and all of it. So how did you cope up with?
No, it was pretty shattering experience. I felt let down, because when I met the senior officer who had called me to Lucknow after I had moved a file for detaining this MLA under NSA, he said that what I had done was right, yet he wanted me to withdraw the file. So I could not fathom as to why is he saying that. Of course, he was continuously telling me it is on your own good, you should withdraw the file, it doesn't serve any purpose. But I was pretty distraught at that point in time.
So sir, I think it's a key learning to all the young civil servants who have just joined in, that what you want to do, you should do. What is right, you should do, and not for your own benefit.
Over a period of time, I realized that you should do, but maybe there could be manner in which you do not unnecessarily offend people around. You do your thing. The difference that happened later in my career was that I was not then unnecessarily trying to offend people. To begin with, I couldn't care less. So not in this particular case, nothing else would have been done, but there are many cases when politicians came to meet me, I was not behaving with them properly. I interacted with them with a lot of prejudice that whatever they are saying is wrong or could be wrong. So I had reluctance in doing what they were saying. But over a period of time, I realized that a lot of politicians were very good, and politicians also came up with some very, very valid suggestions and requests. So they need to be done without prejudice against them. So it was a period of learning from me. To begin with, there was problems because I had prejudice against the politicians, but over a period of time, I think I reconciled and understood the difference between accommodation and compromise.
So now in this age of social media, aspirants who are preparing for civil service, then they get selected, and after they get selected, a lot of media attention, social media attention comes into picture, and then they try to become, camera officers. I was like to coin a term, because the first posting they have their cameras, one person is making reels, and the showbiz and everything. So don't you think that creates a lot of trouble and it distorts the image of civil services?
It's very unfortunate that it is happening. Social media will have its play. Others will approach you, but I think officers making an attempt to present themselves is very unfortunate. They shouldn't be doing that. They should focus on their job, as a consequence of which, if they do become famous, so be it. But they should themselves not try to become famous. As I discern in some of the cases, that inaugurations, meetings, ribbon cuttings are all getting displayed on social media. Good uniform dress that they wear as if it's a fashion show. It's very unfortunate. That's not what civil servants are for. They should focus absolutely on the job. Obviously, their good work will be noted and people are going to talk about it, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that either. So the point is to promote yourself on social media.
Because we've been seeing the trends that an officer enters into a restaurant and then he says that get your license, what's the food, and he inspects everything, scolds them badly, and then it creates...
This does not usually happen. Let us understand that news is an exception. If it were happening every day, then it would be news. So we have this habit of generalizing, an officer throwing his weight around. Yes, there are officers who throw their weight around, and it's very unfortunate. It should happen, but I don't think every officer is throwing his weight around. Many of them do their work quietly.
So, adding on to this aspect, and the last part of this question is, sir, in a recent controversy, we saw a very bright young civil servant who was in the top 10 of the IAS. He or she was nodding her head towards the minister when he arrived, and it continued for about 5, 7, 10 nods, and that became a news too, that young civil servant nodding and pleasing the minister.
No, there is no harm in nodding if you agree with. I am nodding with you when I agree with what you're saying. So it's a very natural response to anything that is said to me. If you agree, you nod your head. It not is merely one or two nods, it's the manner in which you nod that could make a difference. The manner in which you stand, the manner in which you conduct yourself. But just nodding should not be taken against any officer. I mean, you are agreeing with somebody.
So I think this media was creating a news for everything. It's a trouble for civil servants also.
No, media will do what they have to do, civil servants should do what they have to do. They should not play ball with media. That's where the problem is. If they want to become very popular, they want to be very visible, that's where media also starts making fun of them. I mean, it doesn't happen with other officers. There are some officers who want to be very visible in social media, so media also finds something funny with them. They will think about that. But it doesn't happen with every officer.
So further going on to, you had several key postings while the Ayodhya Ram Janmabhoomi dispute was going on, and some ruling party wanted to have a procession, and I read in your book, not just a civil servant. So can you tell about those times? Because I am a 2002 born, so I'm not...
So, this was 1991, but when Ram Janmabhoomi agitation was at its peak, and I was district magistrate Lakhimpur Kheri. There was tension all around. All other districts were under curfew. Fortunately, we didn't have to impose curfew in Lakhimpur because, as they say, Sarkar ka ek baar buland tha. Everyone knew that because of what I had done in Hardoi to the MLA, everyone knew that he will not bother about which political party the person belongs. If he has done something wrong, he'll be taken to task. Unfortunately, a murder happened in this district, and that had some communal implications. So the president of the ruling party wanted to take out a funeral procession. And I knew if that were done, there would be communal riots in the district. So I tried to convince him, telling him that this is your own government, why do you want to create this problem for everyone? He insisted on carrying out the funeral procession. So I got him arrested and put him behind the bars. Late in the evening, the chief minister called me and he said, "Ye aapne kya kiya DM sahab?" So I told him, "Sir, this is he wants to take out a funeral procession, and if he does that, there would be communal riots here, and the government will get a bad name, and it's your government. नहीं कुछ कीजिए, उनको छोड़िए आप इस तरह." So I told him, "Sir, why don't you speak to him and tell him not to take out funeral procession? I will release him." So the conversation ended. I was under the impression that I would be transferred out the next day, which I wasn't. In the morning, I got to know that gentleman has agreed not to take out funeral procession. So I released him. So after 3 months, the same chief minister who was so annoyed with me awarded me as one of the finest district magistrates in the state. So,
oh, wonderful.
So it can happen whichever way.
So I think, sir, that time Mr. Kalyan Singh was...
No, at that time Mr. Kalyan Singh Yadav was the chief
Okay.
minister.
So sir, in your book have specifically mentioned about Mr. Kalyan Singh and your stint with him. You know, a special, you know, incident I would like to recall wherein he had 4-5 rallies and you had a disagreement. So can you please...
Actually, I had just taken over as Director Information and Public Relations, which is a very critical post, very sensitive post. And my job basically was to go every morning and show him the paper clippings and seek his guidance as to what should we do. And on this particular morning when I reached his residence, the Chief Secretary and the DGP were already there. And the Chief Minister appeared a bit upset at the point that you were making. There were 7 rallies lined up for him and he was not there. So he was saying, "मैं कैसे करूँगा 7 rallies और मेरी आखिरी 2 मीटिंग कैंसिल कर दीजिए." So both the Chief Secretary and DGP nodded their head in agreement and said, "हाँ सर, आपकी तबीयत ठीक नहीं, आप कैसे जाएंगे?" You know, I couldn't hold myself. I told him, "Sir, कुछ दिन पहले मैं डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट था और जब ये CM आते हैं तो बड़ी तैयारी होती है और सर लोगों को बड़ी एक्सपेक्टेशंस होती हैं, तो आप चाहे 2 मिनट के लिए जाइए जरूर, कैंसिल मत कीजिए." So he looked at me and said, "क्या मैं जा सकता हूँ?" जैसे ही उन्होंने कहा, the Chief Secretary started nudging me, asking me to keep quiet. I didn't, and I further commented and said, "Sir, मेरी तो ये राय है, बाकी निर्णय तो आपको लेना है." Chief Secretary और जोरों के मुझे हुक्म नहीं मानने लगे. And then after a pause of about 10 seconds, Chief Minister turned towards me and says, "हाँ अनिल जी, आप सही कह रहे हैं, मुझे जाना चाहिए." As soon as he said that, the Chief Secretary pulled his elbow back and said, "हाँ sir, बिल्कुल सही कह रहा है." You know, the beauty of this incident is that I had forgotten it. When Kalyan Singh became Chief Minister for the second time, I had not gone to call on him. So he rang me up and said, "Anil ji, आप मिलने नहीं आए." मैंने कहा, "सर, आप अभी बिजी होंगे, मैं आता हूँ." बोले, "नहीं, अभी आओ." मैं चला गया. उनके कमरे में जैसे ही घुसा तो उन्होंने मुझसे कहा कि मैं तुम्हें अपना सचिव बनाना चाहता हूँ. By that time I had been promoted. मैंने कहा, "ठीक है सर." बोले, "तुम पूछोगे नहीं क्यों बनाना चाहते?" मैंने, "सर, आपने सोच समझ के निर्णय लिया होगा." बोले, "बैठो, तुम बताता हूँ." मैं बैठ गया सोफे पे. कहते, "तुम्हें ये याद है?" अरे मैंने तो in my diary I have narrated this incident on the day Kalyan Singh reminded me. And that is how in fact this incident inspired me to write my last book, Encounters with Politics. Because I found this very fascinating, interesting. I said there would be many more instances which I found in my diaries. I used to write a page of diary every day. And the book came quickly because most of it came from my diary.
Sir, as you mentioned the very famous phrase, आप मुझसे मिलने नहीं आए. So you had a very interesting incident mentioned in the book that there was one minister who had a problem with one of the bureaucrats that वो मेरे से मिलने नहीं आता.
हाँ वो भी बड़ा interesting था. I had taken over as Secretary of Horticulture. This was 2003, and the minister was known to be pretty corrupt. So one day I got a written order from him stating that his deputy director को निलंबित कर दिया, suspend कर दिया, without giving any reason. So I was wondering क्यों भाई. तो I rang up the minister and asked him, "Sir, आपने कहा है सस्पेंड करने को, क्या किया है?" बोले, "मुझसे मिलने नहीं आया." So that's what you're mentioning. So I found it very ridiculous. Why should an officer be suspended for not meeting him? The conversation ended. So I tried to find out about the officer and I was told that he's a very honest, efficient officer. तो मुझे और झटका लगा कि क्या है. मैंने बुलाया उस अफसर को. मैंने कहा, "यार, तुम मिलने क्यों नहीं गए मंत्री से?" बोले, "सर, मैं उनसे कई बार मिलना चाहता हूँ, जैसे वो मिलना चाह रहा है, मैं नहीं मिल पा रहा हूँ." So Mantri was expecting some nazrana. As I said, 3 types of corruption: nazrana, shukrana, jabrana. The minister expected some nazrana. He didn't give them nazrana. So the minister was upset to suspend her. Of course, It's a long story.
So, sir, as you mentioned about Nazrana, Shukrana and Jubrana, you had worked with the Mayawati government also, and during that you had mentioned an incident wherein an officer came up with a briefcase and an undersecretary going with a briefcase showing files to the chief minister and coming out without that. So what was that?
No, there was a system of day officers with the chief minister. I was a special secretary in a secretariat, and we had 4 or 5 of us. So each one had a day on which we had to be day officer. On this particular day, I was the day officer. I was sitting outside. Chief minister was inside doing something. So there was this district magistrate of a district. This guy was a year junior to me. He came with a briefcase in his hand, which was fine. He went inside, and he said hello. We exchanged pleasantries. He went inside. When he came out, he didn't have a briefcase in his hand. So I asked him, "यार तुम्हारा briefcase अंदर छूट गया?" So he said, "नहीं, boss उसमें कुछ फाइलें लेकर आए थे chief minister को." मैंने कहा, "District magistrate तो फाइल लेकर नहीं आया chief minister." So then the expression on his face told the whole story.
So you had mentioned in your book that you had a very nice and unique way dealing with corrupt officers by praising them. And
not generally, I didn't praise corrupt officers.
No, not.
But in a particular situation, this was when I was posted as managing director, pick up the state financial corporation, and my job was basically to wind it up.
Okay.
And I was wondering whether it could be revived. So I got a bright idea that some way it could be revived. And in that process, I had also to recover a lot of amount from defaulters, because this financial corporation was lending to industry and then recovering them and giving it back to the creditor. Okay. So I had this idea, let's try and recover. Now, how do you recover that? So then it came to my mind, I called the most corrupt general manager for a conversation. And this was because by that time I had realized that all corrupt people who are not behind the bars are very efficient. So can I convince him into doing something positive? So when he came for a conversation, we are having a cup of tea, I started the conversation by saying, "इस संस्था में कुछ बचा तो है नहीं, तुम चूस हो गया." Suddenly he was shocked.
Straight away.
Shocked. Because no matter how corrupt you are, no one admits to being corrupt. So then I told him, अच्छा बीती ताही बिसार दे, आगे की सुध ले, तुम छोड़ दो उसको. अब जो तुमने सुना, मैं इसको रिवाइव करना चाहता हूँ. उसके लिए रिकवरी जरूरी है, तुम मेरी सहायता करो. So this guy, again to cut long story, put his heart and soul, and we recovered most of them. The organization became profitable. When it became profitable, someone else wanted to take my position, so I was transferred out. So it didn't really matter to me, but I kept track of this officer, and everyone told me, "Sir, वो तो लगा रहता है, बड़ी मेहनत से सब काम करता है." तो मैंने एक दिन उसको चाय पे बुलाया घर पे. मैंने कहा, "लोग तुम्हारी बड़ी तारीफ करते हैं, तुम्हें हृदय परिवर्तन कैसे हो?" तो उसने कहा, "सर, जब आप 300 लोगों के सामने मेरी पीठ थपथपाते थे, तो सर मेरी छाती चौड़ी हो जाती थी, और जो किक मुझे उस समय मिली वो पहले कभी नहीं मिली." So he probably discovered a new kick under his work. I can't say that for all corrupt officers, because I came some corrupt officers who I couldn't correct. So it takes all types to make this work.
In this era wherein we have Gen Z IAS officers also born after 99 and so on, so they stress a lot about transfers, and as you say, transfer is like death. So what advice do you have for them?
No, I see, not only now, even earlier people used to stress about transfer. There's nothing new with Gen Z, and during my time also. So I always felt that let me look inwards and see whether I can do something to avoid the transfer without compromising on my principles. And I discovered I could do a lot.
Okay.
For example, my behavior to politicians. Why should you so to say misbehave? Why should you do the right work that he's asking of you? Because then you develop a reputation of being an efficient officer. ये सही चीज तुरंत कर देगा, गलत नहीं करेगा. That's the reputation you have. But if you have a reputation कि honest officer है, कोई काम नहीं करता, तो transfer तो हो गई. I mean I know of so many IAS officers who don't do anything. They're just honest. अब सरकार आपको खाली honest होने के लिए पैसा तो नहीं देती ना. I mean honest तो आपको होना ही. Honesty is a necessary condition. But you have also to be efficient. You have to deliver. So delivery is as important, very very important, which we don't discuss anywhere. We only discuss ये तो बड़ा honest है, बदमाश है, पैसे मंगा रहा है, अरे उसके against action लो. But just being honest doesn't help, because the man on the street wants action from you, so you better act.
So from now, coming to a very important portfolio that you managed, that was school education. So like to narrate one short incident. In 2018, I was giving my 10th board
You
examination.
were okay.
And our paper was leaked. So when I came back from the examination center, one of our batchmates told that this paper, I got this paper, the very morning, and there was something like that. And post that you had a press conference and everything like that. So I had a dream to ask this question whenever I meet you. So I'm asking this. What was it like that in school education? Because such a tough portfolio and this paper leaks and everything.
When I was shifted from core to school education, I thought that I will be getting out of dark dungeons of coal mines to bright lights of school education. But to my utmost horror, I found that the mafias of school education were much worse than mafias of coal. In coal, the mining is underground, the mafia is overground. In education, all the mafias are underground, eating into essentials of Indian society. So whether it is the Nakal mafia, whether it's the publications mafia, whether it's a B.Ed, D.Ed college mafia, there's so many mafias that are running the show and destroying our social system.
So, sir, what kind of pressure did you face when the paper was leaked and then you had a press conference?
No, there was no pressure per se on me because it was not directly my domain. I was Secretary of Education, but this was CBSE thing. On that particular day, in fact, I was in Dehradun attending to my ailing father. When the chairman CBSE rang me up and she said that this has happened, and she explained the whole thing to me, and I could discern that it was no fault of CBSE. So I told her to hold a press conference and explain the facts. Then she told me that minister is not allowing me to hold a press conference. So I spoke to the minister. I asked him, साहब या तो आप बात कीजिए मीडिया से या वो बात करें. He said नहीं कोई खास बात नहीं है, कोई जरूरत नहीं है प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस. तो ठीक. अगले दिन सुबह it became a serious crisis. So I was getting my dad from Dehradun to Delhi to get him admitted to a hospital. On the way, I sent a number of SMS to my minister asking him to hold a press conference. Nothing happened. By evening, I got my dad admitted into hospital, and it was full-blown crisis. Next morning, when I went to meet the minister, he tells me, Anil ji, वो chairman CBSE को तो हटाना पड़ेगा. तो मैंने कहा उसकी क्या गलती है? बोले गलती तो नहीं है लेकिन situation diffuse हो जाएगी. Now, then I had to come up with something to protect her. And because of my experience or something, the idea came immediately. I told him, sir, अभी तो chairman CBSE buffer है आपके और मीडिया के बीच में. The moment you remove her, the media will be after you. This was, I hit the bullseye. He predicted, हाँ तो सही कह रहे हैं. क्या किया जाए? मैंने कहा तो प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करें सर. अरे प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस कौन करेगा? इतने एजिटेटेड है. मैंने कहा क्या मारेंगे थोड़ी ना. कौन करेगा प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस? मैंने कहा हम कर लेंगे प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस. So that's when the decision was taken, and later on I held the press conference, explained to everyone reasonably. It was it was pretty troublesome press conference to begin with, but at the end of it, everything was sorted out.
So this culture in which India is developing, the resignation culture, anything happens in any ministry or any department, people start asking resignations. The minister should resign, the secretary should resign. So what do you think about it?
It is wrong. It is wrong. It's an impulsive reaction, and impulsive reactions are never. I mean, we must understand the why of a problem. We don't understand, we impulsively say this should happen. So I'm not for it. I mean, we should, with a cool head, try and understand why it happened. If somebody is responsible, take action against him. But it can't be impulsively done.
So, bringing back to the dark mines of coal, how was your stint as a coal secretary? Because coal has always been into, talk of the town sort of thing. Because everybody is talking about coal, the coal crisis, and how India managed it and under your leadership. So,
when I was posted as coal secretary, as I was mentioning during the conference, I did ring a friend of mine to ask him कैसा है coal sector. So उसने ये कहा मुझसे कि gangs of Wasseypur देखी है क्या? तो मुझे समझ में आ गया कि यहाँ सब गड़बड़ी गड़बड़ है. But still I went to a friend of mine, showed him his palm, showed him my palm, and asked him कैसा है. वही 3 महीना बड़े गड़बड़ है. मैंने उसके बाद क्या हुआ बोले उसके बाद आदत पड़ जाएगी. So coal was tough, but I had sufficient experience before that. Not handle a crisis of this scale and nature, but I had handled many crises before.
How big was the crisis?
It was huge. Crisis was both in terms of alleged wrongful allocation of coal blocks, overstated by the CAG and unfortunately endorsed by the Supreme Court, making it even worse. And there was already shortage of coal. By cancelling these blocks, We were losing out on 90 million tons of coal, which was almost 20% or 25% of our coal production. So we were already in crisis, additional crisis. So it was a huge crisis. There was shortage of coal. There was this so-called scam. I called it so-called because in my understanding, and I've written in my book, there were wrongs that were done. To call it a scam was wrong. Because by calling it a scam, you cancelled everything, good, bad, ugly. CAG said after 2006, Supreme Court cancelled everything in 90s also. No explanation asked, no one questioned. It just went on, and gradually we are discovering that all was not wrong with that.
And finally things
They turned around because, as I keep saying, the real problem was not mafia or the coal block allocation. The real problem was low production of coal. So our focus shifted totally on how to improve coal production. And when coal production improved, then things got sorted.
And then you mentioned in your book that the files were digitized, the auction was digitized.
Oh yes, we made it, I was aware of the fact that if I had to save my backside, I had to make things transparent because I may also commit mistakes, which I did. As coal secretary, there were 2 such cases where I took wrong decisions. But since it was transparent and since as soon as the decision was taken, it put on the portal, I was informed that it was a wrong decision and I corrected it and held a press conference and explained how it went wrong. So it went off like that.
And sir, to ask you a question on digitization, there was one interesting incident wherein the chairman of Aditya Birla Group came into your office and he said something about digitization.
When he entered my room, he couldn't believe that there was no file on my table. He had come with his 2 CEOs. He said, this is for the first time I'm seeing such a senior officer without a file on his table. There was no file or paper. So I told him, I don't have a file or paper. He asked me, what do you mean? I said, I have digitized every file, every paper. So he said, how? So I explained to him what I did. Then he turned towards his 2 CEOs and said, why can't we do it in our office? So I told him, you won't be able to do it. He said, why? I said, I can afford to be transparent, but you can't.
So, sir, going on to the next aspect, how can young students who are maybe in their first, second, third years start preparing for civil services? Because first year you are just into the college, you are a bit liberalized also from your bad years of school. So people want to do a little bit of fun, do some activities, co-curriculars and extra. So what should they do in their first and second year?
First year is the right time to start preparing to prepare for the civil service. Through fun. It has to be fun. Learning has to be fun. If it's drudgery, then you will not learn. And as I mentioned earlier, they should focus on these 3 aspects. They should focus on how to improve their comprehension. They should focus on how do you improve your analytical skills. And third, how should you improve your communication skills. All these 3 attributes require a lot more time than just reading a book and acquiring knowledge. That doesn't take that much time. But acquiring these attributes require 2-3 years. So as you are doing your bachelor's, those 3 years are good enough to improve these aspects. There is way of how you can go about doing this, but this is very critical. If you've done that, then all you have to do is to acquire knowledge and you'll be able to understand through comprehension, analyze through analytical skills and express. Ultimately you get your marks on what you write. But if you don't know how to write, then how do you write an answer? The moment you come to a situation where you are able to express whatever comes to your mind, it flows through your pen, then later on knowledge will also flow through your pen. Analytically, if you develop those skills. So if you develop these attributes, these 3 attributes, then preparation for the civil service becomes very easy, simple, and the chances of success are much more.
So India being such a diverse country, we have people studying in Hindi mediums and their regional languages. So, coaching mafias getting into the tradition of reading only 2 newspapers. I would like not to name them, 2 major newspapers. Those newspapers are very hard for people who has studied all his life in Hindi or Marathi and regional languages. So how can,
See, now you can give your examination in Hindi or languages. So I advise people that you stick to the language you are comfortable in because that's the medium of communication. You can't start learning a language and then appear in the civil service. So go by what comes naturally to you.
So adding on to that, there is a lot of perception about power in the civil service, that I want to become a civil servant because I'll have the protocol, I'll have the escort vehicles and big bungalows. So how do you look?
See, there is no harm in feeling privileged. There's no harm. I mean, it's very natural for a person to feel a bit powerful. No harm. But the question is how you are using it and what are you doing to acquire it. Whether you are showing it off, you are trying to impress people, or you are using the authority that you have for the welfare of the people. Why would people listen to you if you're not in a position of power? So power is required for you to do things. But the purpose for which you are using power, that is very critical. If you are there only to show off, then there is a problem. Then that's not the right use of power. But, feeling powerful, nothing wrong with it. It's human to be in a position of power.
So I'd like to interrupt in between and ask that you had mentioned about a term called getting things done. And through that, Sarkari Gundai, using Sarkari Gundai to getting things done. So if you like to...
I have, government or government officers have a lot of authority. Unfortunately, we misuse it or use it for our personal gain. Why can't that authority be used to do just things for the welfare of the people? To throw your weight around to get a good thing done. I remember in the same case that I was mentioning about Vikati State Financial Corporation. We owed about 250 crores to SIDBI, of which 80 crores was the principal and 170 crores was the interest. So I did some research and I found that SIDBI had written off loans of private sector, written off interest of certain private sector entities. That happens in every bank. So I rang up MD SIDBI and asked him that if you write off these 170 crores, I'll pay you 80 crores. So he said, how can I write? Now that's where the Sarkari Gunda came in. So I told him, you have not done my research about me. I was earlier in the police. A batchmate of mine is in the CBI. I only have to write a letter to him to state that he is written off interest in the private sector and public ke liye mana kar raha. It was Sarkari Gunda and not for my personal gain. Hit the bullseye. Next day he rang me up, if you give me 80 crores, I'll write off 170 crores. And what am I doing? I was acting as Sarkari Gunda. Now, it may not be fully ethical, but there is no harm in a bit of Gundai for some good work.
So, you stress a lot on the fact that for an idea to be successful, you have 7 to 8 mantras for an idea to be successful.
Not mantras. I would believe that for any idea to sustain and fructify over a period of time, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, judicially tenable, emotionally relatable, and environmentally sustainable. So if these aspects are considered and taken care of, the chances are that idea will survive, thrive, and go on for a long time.
So sir, there are a lot of think tanks and there's a culture of think tanks. So how can they be involved in such a policy making so that the idea when it comes to the government and then when the implementation and the policy making starts, the idea shall have no hindrances such as judicial intervention, PILs,
external agencies are very, very important in formulation of policies and fructifying ideas. Because government officers are tied up with routine activities so much that they don't have time to research or understand the implication of what is being proposed. It is an external agency can objectively determine whether a particular idea and its implication would work. So that is where external agencies are very, very, very important to play. They can research, go into the details, analyze, and then present decision options, clearly outlining the implications or the consequences of each decision. It becomes easy for a decision maker to take a decision once that sort of a paper comes in front of you.
So, I come from a family of doctors, and the last time I visited a hospital, there was a poor beggar. He was living in the jhopadis, as we call it, but he had a card called Ayushman card, and that made him, get the services in the cashless mode. So, has been credited to the Ayushman Bharat. Before that, the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. So, can you please tell us?
My association was with actually visualizing, conceptualizing, articulating, implementing, and evaluating the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. I was there for almost 7 years, where I thought over that idea. The scheme did pretty well. Came to be recognized world over, ILO, UNDP, World Bank, everyone recognized. But when the new government came, they probably, like many other things, they dumped this scheme for 2-3 years. And then I remember having received a call from the then Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister. He asked me to come over and brief the Prime Minister on health insurance. So I asked him, I am an Education Secretary, what have I to do with that? He said, you had done this scheme RSBY and why don't you come and talk?
And this was post 2014.
I'm talking of 2018, when I was close to my retirement actually. So finally I went over and briefed the Prime Minister and he agreed with the proposition that I had, and on that day Ayushman Bharat, though of course Christian later, Ayushman Bharat was born on that day.
So your stint with various different politicians, in your book, second book, Ethical Dilemmas with Civil Servant, and in your fourth book, Encounters with Politicians, what were the ethical dilemmas? Can you narrate one
to begin with? There was so many ethical dilemmas. You know, if you understand, ethical dilemmas are, so to say, non-legal dilemmas. You know, one is you have to take action which is illegal, which is wrong. So the question of ethics does not arise. Ethics arises when there is a grey area. I mean, you don't know whether it could be right, it could be wrong, but there are no legal implications thereof. So a number of such dilemmas arise. So for example, in the first instance, whether to take action against MLA on the evidence that I had got, law had nothing to do with it. It had to be an ethical question as to whether what is right and what is wrong, whether I should take action against him or not. If I had taken action against him, nothing illegal. If not taken action, nothing illegal. There was no legality in it. So this sort of a dilemma was there. So there, when I put the person behind the bar in Lakhimpur Kheri, for which later on I released him. So had I not put him behind the bars, nothing illegal. If I put behind the bars, nothing illegal. So there is no legality in it. I have to take a decision. The implication of that decision on law and order, on what will happen, these are ethical decisions. So right through my career, I spoke about saving that officer, where the minister wanted him to be suspended.
Through a special rule that UP had.
So again, these were ethical questions. To my mind, what was right and wrong, and I was trying to do that.
So at that time, sir, what motivated you to do that? Because you knew that you could be transferred, or
I'll tell you, I was very clear in my mind that I'm going to protect my team members if they are not wrong. Because that's the only way I could get their loyalty to what I wanted them to do. Once an officer working with me felt protected, then he would put in every effort. So it helped me in my work if I protected my officer. That motivated me.
So, you working with the Honorable Prime Minister very closely. So, how was, because you have worked in both his terms and pre-2014 and post-2014. So, what changes do you see? What were the things like pre-2014? Because we don't get a balanced view.
No, it was very different. In pre-2014, decision making was very difficult. And every ministry was on its own. The Prime Minister on occasions appeared helpless. I mean, Dr. Manmohan Singh was absolutely amazingly fine individual and intellect of high caliber. No one can doubt his integrity. So he was absolutely outstanding as a person. But I'm not sure whether he was an outstanding leader. Because I may be wrong, but I found him to be a very poor communicator. And one of the principal things that a leader has to have communication skills. He should be able to carry the team along, convey this he couldn't. As against that, Mr. Modi is a communicator par excellence. He's a great leader. But the problem here is that all power has got concentrated in the PMO. That is creating a different type of problem. So there are two extremes. Total decentralization during Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, total centralization during Prime Minister Modi's time. I think there has to be somewhere in between.
So post 2014, we saw some trends that the government, especially the PMO, picking amazing and very distinguished civil servants, very senior one. You being one of them.
No, I never worked with the PMO, but they did pick up in the first 2 years some of the finest officers, whether it was telecom, whether it was petroleum, very fine officers were picked up.
In one of his speeches, I heard that it mentioned that one of the officers named Parmeswaran Iyer, he was picked up for the sanitation and the Swachh Bharat scheme. So, what vision that PM had, that he was choosing the right people for the right?
Yeah, PM was very clear. I remember in the first 2 to 3 years, the only consideration was efficiency, integrity, and he picked up those officers.
And so you mentioned in your book also disagreements with the PM. So, as a student, and we couldn't disagree with our deans or the professor because we had some kind of fears that what if our scores would be less, what if we would not get the right positions in the committees. You did not have any fear, and
I had learned it over a period of time. I had suffered earlier. So I learned it. It is how you present your point. It's very material. I mean, the idea should not be to offend anybody. Idea to present a reasoned argument. And the second thing was, my job was to explain to him, I could be overruled. Earlier, I never accepted being overruled. I used to feel very upset. I used to take it personally. Later on, I said, I'll do my best. And then leave him to take a call. And once he decides, I will not take it personally. Earlier in my career, I used to take it very personally if what I said was not agreed to by my boss.
Can you share some one or two incidents wherein his fellow cabinet minister disagreed with him and the Prime Minister was very...
There weren't very many who had the courage to disagree with him. Perhaps the only two ministers who spoke their mind, others didn't even speak their mind, were Mr. Arun Jaitley, who the Prime Minister regarded a lot. He was major, he was the real troubleshooter.
Okay.
He used to, wherever there was a problem.
So how was he? Because
he was outstanding. He was one of the finest persons and finest politicians that I came across. I mean, he's a consensus builder. I mean, he could talk to anybody and convince him about what he's saying. And he did not go to talk to anybody with prejudice. So he brought around people like even Mamata Banerjee, Naveen Patnaik, when we were doing that core government. So he used to speak his mind out, very non-offensive. And Prime Minister almost always agreed with him. Other was Nitin Gadkari. Nitin Gadkari was very blunt. I remember in one of the meetings said, Pradhan Mantri ji file to aapke PMO mein lambit hai. I mean, no one else could say that. He said that on his face, in front of us. And which is a fact. I mean, there were so many other facts, but no one had the courage to speak that out. Nitin Gadkari, outspoken, an absolutely outstanding minister. He delivered to the core. He could deliver anything.
So one thing, as you mentioned about taking consensus building, so you had a very unique way of visiting respective states and building consensus. Holding meetings with the chief minister, the chief secretaries. So how was that? And because a lot of bias is there. People tend to think.
The logic is that you have to decide what you want to achieve. You want to appear as the most powerful person or most right person, or you want to get the task done. Now, for getting a task done, you have to convince the stakeholder and bring out a value proposition for him at a location where he is not biased or I am not biased. So the best way was to go down to the states and talk to them. So there was no prejudice, so to say. I went there. And then not only did I go there, I explained to them what is in it for them. Once they understood that there was value in what I was saying, they accepted it. And it happened in large number of states which were not ruled by the party that was ruling at the center.
So post your retirement, you'll be heading and you're the founder of a foundation called Nexus of Good. Can you please tell us about what is
Nexus of Good happened because throughout my career I came across absolutely outstanding people, both in the government and non-governmental domain. And I used to wonder, why can't these people come together? Can we have some way to get it together? Of course, it was very amorphous at that point in time. There was no concrete idea of setting up a Nexus Good. And then an incident happened that triggered this. I visited a school in a place called Pastepada, which is 150 kilometers north of Thane district, in backward area, where I was told that there is no electricity in that government primary school. So I thought I must visit that school. So I visited that school. It was a 2-room school. So when I went there, there was only one teacher there, single teacher school, Sandeep Gund. He came and received me and took me inside the room. The moment I went inside the room, I was shocked. I saw every child had a tablet and a smart screen. So I asked him, "Yaar, bijli kahan se late ho tumne itna?" So he said, he took me around his 2 rooms and showed me a foldable solar panel. I was shocked. I said,
my God.
This is gazab ka aadmi. Then I asked him, where did you get the money to buy these tablets? He said, sir, jab main aaya tha, so there were about 40-50 students. Many of them didn't come to the school. I didn't know what to do with them, so I had a second-hand laptop. And the place I live, there is some internet connectivity. So I used to download educational videos to come to the school and play them. And then everyone used to congregate around it. So after 2 months, about 20-25 parents came to meet him. They asked him a very funny question. Guruji, पहले तो जाते नहीं थे, अब ये भागते हैं स्कूल, आपने क्या किया? तो उसने बताया कि मैं जो वीडियो चलाता हूँ हो सकता है इसकी वजह से हो. Then he thought parents are interested, so he asked them कि can you all contribute 500 rupees each? I want to buy 2 tablets. कहा जो भी हो उन्होंने 500 रुपए दिए, बड़े मुश्किल से दिए. They were all poor people. He brought 2 tablets and attached them to his laptop. This guy was great. Now this passion of teacher was getting to be known around. So one CSR funding agency and an NGO visited the school, and when they spoke to the teacher, they were very impressed. So they funded the tablets and smartphone. Around which time I also visited the school. I was also very impressed. So I took a photograph with Sandeep Wood and tweeted it. Suddenly Sandeep Wood becomes a local hero. So teachers from other schools started visiting this place and started getting to know वो कैसे replicate करें. In the meanwhile, I met President of India, Mr. Kovind. He had just taken over as president. So while sipping a cup of tea, I narrated this Sandeep Wood incident to him. He also looked impressed. So I said, would you like to meet him, sir? He said, why not? So I called Sandeep Wood over to Delhi. He met the President of India and suddenly he becomes a national hero. But this is not the end of the story. The Pastepada model of digital classroom has now been replicated in more than 50,000 schools of Maharashtra.
Oh my God.
And not a single penny from the government, all crowdfunding. So that gave me the idea that if a good thing that is being done, if you provide a platform, then others will get to know and try and replicate. This was the genesis of Nexus Good. The fundamental principle is, if all the rascals and ruffians of the world can come together and make life difficult for us, why should good people come together? So then we started a portal. Now we have about 16 city chapters.
You have the annual awards also.
We have annual awards. So now the movement has taken off.
So finally, as we come into the end of the podcast, how do you manage such things? Because you have retired, but still you are speaking at Harvard, sometimes Berkeley. You go to colleges. You are writing your 5th book, I think.
Yes.
Yes. So how do you manage?
No, there are 24 hours a day. You sleep for 7 hours. 17 hours is more than sufficient. You can do everything, provided you manage your time.
Any advice that you'd like to give young students and young aspirants?
Enjoy every moment that you are in. Focus on yourself rather than thinking about others. We waste a lot of time thinking about others. Do what you think is good for yourself and you'll be successful.
Any book lastly that you'd like to give?
I'm writing my 5th book titled You Can Make It Happen. This is basically about, given the set of circumstances, everyone can do what he wants to do.
So, sir, I would like to conclude by a share that I have borrowed from you only. That a lot of good work by civil servants get unnoticed because the share goes like, दिखाई कम दिया करते हैं बुनियाद के पत्थर, जमीन में जो दब गए इमारत उन्हीं पर कायम.
Absolutely.
So, what can be done to get that work highlighted?
Nexus is good.
Nexus.
That's what we are doing. A lot of good work. In fact, day before yesterday, in a newspaper, I write a weekly column.
Yes.
I wrote about a collector doing a fantastic job in Rajasthan, remote district. So I write an article every week about good work.
Thank you so much, sir, for spending time with us. It is truly an honor to have you at NMIMS Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.